Hey you guys, it's Teresa and welcome back to my channel. And what is this? The room is brighter. I finally switched out my lights. Oh, it's so nice, not gonna lie. But today we're gonna be talking about my thoughts on a book that I think I haven't seen a ton of it on BookTube, which is a shame. But that is When the Moon Was Ours by Anna Marie McLemore. Now this is an Own Voices novel. I think the base of the story is has mainly Latina, like a Latinx cast written by a Latina, and she does have some experience with like the LGBT community, primarily part of the transgender community, but I can't get into it because there is some spoilers, and so we're just gonna jump on right in. So for those of you who don't know, When the Moon Was Ours, it's about these two kids or teenagers named Sam and Miel. Miel has been growing roses from her wrists since she was a child and saved from, I believe, the water tower. And then Sam loves to paint the moon for Miel to kind of show that she hasn't lost the moon, which is a big thing throughout kind of the book. And then now that Miel's roses have kind of gotten the attention of these four witches, or these four girls who are kind of known as witches, in their school, she is faced with the decision of either choosing her roses or kind of destroying the relationship she has with Sam and all the secrets that she's kept kind of with her own family and with Sam himself. So lots of stuff going on in the book. Now my first thoughts on this was that I literally haven't heard much about it on BookTube, like at all. I probably heard just the title. Like the title was so familiar to me, I had no issues figuring out like, oh, what the title was, who wrote it. Like I'm pretty sure whenever I think of Anna Marie McLemore, my first thought always went to When the Moon Was Ours. So that was kind of the only thing I knew about it. But then when I was looking through my I think it was Barnes & Noble or Goodreads list, because I wanted to read more LGBT characters with trans characters there. This was one of the books that was featured on there. So I like kind of bought it without a second thought, because like I said, all I had heard was just kind of the title. I didn't know too much about it, and I kind of explained why in my writing vlog, which is I have written in a couple of trans and non-binary characters, and I can only read so many articles, I'm not gonna lie, and there isn't a lot of that kind of representation in high fantasy, which is a shame. Like I said, articles only get me so far, so I like reading about them and see how they are depicted in the community. It is depicted in fantasy or magical realism or contemporary, so I went on kind of a binge last month and read a bunch. Actually this month, but like last month I bought a bunch of like characters and books that were kind of in this spectrum, which isn't a lot, but I will kind of get into that into a different video. But so I kind of bought this book without a second thought, and I read it as soon as November hit, and now we have a review. So the things that I did like, and this is a list. The first thing that I did like was the diversity in the book. Like I said, this is Own Voices. The main character is Latina, same thing with the author herself, as well as kind of the entire the entire community that this takes place. In fact, she said in her acknowledgments that the basis of the story was for her to tackle her own fear toward the Mexican legend La Llorona. I can never say the word like straight off the bat, but that was kind of her way of dealing with her fear for that myth. Probably isn't going to help her much that there is now a horror movie coming out of that same myth, but you know, it has some basis in there. And then on top of that, there is, I believe, I forgot the kind of tribe. Let me see here. Here we go. It's there's a practice in Afghanistan and Pakistan where families who have daughters but no sons will dress up as a son. So there is, I believe, this family is either Pakistani or Afghanistan. I don't remember, but she played off of that cultural part called the Baka Posh. Pardon my butchered pronunciation. If you guys know how to pronounce it, please tell me down below. I'd really love to know. But so there's some of that representation in there as well, which I think I have never heard of that side of those cultures. So to read about it in a book and hear more about it makes me very intrigued and want to learn more. So you know me, trying to diversify not only my reading, but also my knowledge on things in the world. The writing was so poetic, I felt like it flowed, and I had the issue, though it's not much of an issue really, that once I got into the book, I got really lost in the book. I had issues putting it down and wanting to find something else, like, not find something else, but like put it down and do something else. I wanted to sit down and finish it off. It was such a great book that it was so poetic and so flowy and so magical, and I just ate it all up. Each character that was in here, from the antagonist to the protagonist to the side characters, they were also separate of each other. Like even the Bonner sisters, who are seen as the antagonists in the book, are these 4 sisters who are kind of, I believe they're mentioned as Las Brujas Gringas or Las Gringas Brujas. I don't remember the exact like I need to catch up on my Spanish, but I'm pretty sure that in Spanish it's noun then adjective. But they are essentially called the White Witches, and they are these girls who kind of have won over the entire town, and that's just how Miel and her roommate Araceli kind of refer to them as. And you think that they would kind of blend into one another because they are referred to as such, but they're also like distinctive. They have their own personality traits, they have their own backstories and values and morals, which was really nice to see in these kind of in like a book such as this one. I also thought that Sam and Miel's relationship was really pure. You can see that they were very devoted to each other, and it was kind of a romance that like where they grew into each other. They started off as friends and then became something more, and it was very subtle but very also in your face. However, they didn't really let that, it wasn't a big pivotal part of the book. Their relationship was, but not the romantic aspect of it. I think their protectiveness and their loyalty toward one another was the main driving point of this novel, which was really nice to see characters falling into a relationship with one another still have that key focus. I feel like in certain YA novels, once the characters get together, they lose the values that started them together, if that makes sense. I feel like that doesn't make sense, but at the same time it does make sense. It's a very confusing time. So, Sam's story, I'm not gonna lie, literally brought me to tears. I think that his character was, aside from Miel, was one of the most like fleshed out stories out there. He could definitely see his struggles and his secret, and how he found himself in this situation where it wasn't a choice, if that makes sense. Like the situation that was given to him starting out wasn't a choice, but he kept on with it throughout the years, and it just became him. He couldn't see himself as anything else, and it was just so wonderful to read. There's even this scene, semi-spoiler but also not semi-spoiler, where Sam and his mother, who he has been kind of terrified of having this chat with, have this talk, and his mother kind of accepts him for who he was, even though she was very not I want to say confused, but concerned, because in previous chapters she had brought some things up that kind of implied she would answer to this specific, his answer one way. So I was concerned, and I was literally moved to tears. Another thing that I did like was Miel's roommate, Araceli, who was kind of Miel's older sister / mother figure throughout the series, and there's a plot twist with her that I did not see coming, but it's whatever. She played such an important role in both Sam and Miel's life. I think that to Araceli, Sam ended up representing something that he wants for himself, and for Miel, Araceli was something comfortable, something she could return to, even though Araceli was kind of scary. I'm not gonna lie, she literally terrified me. Like if I had a friend who had like a sister or a mother like Araceli, probably would just kind of like nod and smile and say, "Okay, ma'am, yes, ma'am," and leave the room as quickly as possible and rarely make eye contact. And if somehow my friend and I got into a fight, 10 out of 10, I probably wouldn't be going to their house anytime soon, because Araceli would just terrify me. But I loved her all the same. I think that she played such an important role with kind of the overall story. There was so much like complexity with her that I think didn't get lost in translation throughout the novel, which was really good. In fact, she got more and more complex, and I just adored how she played this like role for Miel when she had no one else in her life but Sam. So she had like a older sibling / parental role to fall back to. Now, as for things I didn't like, this was something that I didn't notice until I was done with the book. And again, didn't even realize until I was making this kind of like review for this book. I felt like the plot was everywhere and nowhere at once. It is magical realism, so we are going to get a lot of plots that kind of are nonsensical, don't have much, but the central plot with the Bonner sisters was kind of the plot that was advertised in the book, or at least the synopsis. And sometimes I felt like that plot wasn't even the central plot. It was like a side plot mixed in with the other side plots that we got to see throughout the book. So I felt like the book, while wonderful and magical and great, was just a compilation of side plots and no connection to the main plot, if that makes sense. Which, like, again, I didn't notice it until I had finished reading the book and was making my review for the book. I think that's the same case with everyone else. The plot was just kind of like, it was there, but it wasn't, they still remained separate strands throughout the book from start to finish and didn't meet in the middle or didn't reconnect back to the trunk. If the branches didn't come back to the trunk, I don't know, I guess this is a tree now, but that's just kind of one of my biggest qualms with it. My other biggest qualm was that a lot of Sam and Miel's growth and development as friends into lovers, their growth from friends into lovers, happened a lot of it off the page. It happened throughout their life before the book even had started, which isn't a bad thing. However, we did get to hear a lot of like their interpretations and like their feelings for one another through those interactions, and I would have liked more interactions with them throughout the page. I felt like most of what I had been reading, like I would sit there and go, Sam and Miel, excited for them. And like we would read about them as a couple or like a pairing of friends or lovers in like separate contexts. Like we didn't see them actually talk much on the page. It was a lot of like internal monologues and a lot of like remembering and like saying things back, which isn't a bad thing, like I said, but I feel like since this was kind of like the central plot, or one of which, they would have had more page time and more interactions with one another. And it was just like by the end of the book, I was like, oh, I love this, but at the same time, where did they go? Because like I said, a lot of the stuff that we read was like their interpretations of the things that they were doing, the things that they did to get each other to like fall in love with one another, or like how they became friends, their past, and like their limitations that they never really touched. But we never got to see that interaction. Really, like I think there was like a few scenes with them actually interacting together, which was kind of, I think, a shame, because they are the title characters of the book, and somehow their interactions were, I wouldn't say minimum, because they did interact quite a bit, but they weren't as much as one would expect when you go ahead and actually like have characters be the main characters of a book. Overall, I would give this a 5 out of 5 stars, despite these little kind of larger problems I had with the book. I felt like my reading of it, until you got to the end and kind of realized everything, it was still great. I wouldn't change my original rating of it. I think that this book is good as is. However, I would like to add some other things. And it isn't a magical realism book, so a lot of the times it's very nonsensical. There are a lot of weird things going on. So it's not necessarily like detrimental to me, because sometimes like magical realism books, like they never really connect, which isn't bad. I would definitely recommend this book to anyone who wants to read it. I think the representation is wonderful. I think that there are a lot of important topics about sexual identity and history and family and gender identity and gender expression in this book that was, I think, very important to read, as well as kind of, like I said, that random bit of Afghanistan and Pakistani cultural references in there that I didn't even know existed. And I think that some of these things, like some of these cultural bits and tidbits, do need to be added into, especially like more Middle Eastern cultures, because they do get lost in translation, and given the state of the world at the current moment, they also get lost in a lot of stereotypes, and they become very black and white. And I think that the distinction and the importance of all this stuff is just very important to me. So, also, I bet that some of you guys have actually read some of Anna Marie McLemore's books, and I would really love to read more of her books. I know that Wild Beauty is one of them, and that is going to be on my list for 2019. But if you guys have any other recommendations of her books, like or if you guys want me to prioritize a book before something else, just tell me down below and I'll be happy to do that. But that is it for my tea talk of When the Moon Was Ours by Anna Marie McLemore. This book literally tore me in half and put me back together, and then tore like a chunk of me off, so it's fine. I'm pretty sure I lost a bit of my soul while reading this book in the best way possible. But if you want to see more of my tea talks, I do have an entire playlist of them, so I will try to link that somewhere. But if you want me to see more tea talks, feel free to go ahead and suggest books to me down below. I do like doing series reviews as well, and yes, I do count duologies as series, anything where there is more than one book. But yeah, or any other books that I have read or will be reading in the future. Keep an eye out for like my TBRs. Those are normally where I get my recommendations for said tea talks. And if I don't, I kind of pick and choose which one. But until then, all my social medias will be down below if you guys want to talk to me. I don't know why I said up when it's down below. But like I said, all of that will be there. If you want to chat with me or suggest books to me, whichever one you want to do. I do upload every Saturday and Wednesday, so feel free to subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. I've been getting better at it, especially since my lighting has changed, so it's all good now. But until then, which is Wednesday, I will talk to you guys in the comments. Bye!